The mystic chords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched by the better angels of our nature. President Abraham Lincoln.
The Civil War and all the monumental battles that had occurred within the war itself changed our nation as we know it forever. However, it isn't just the stories of famous battles and bloodshed that should leave an impression on our country's history. Men traveled far from home, leaving mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, wives. The Civil War was, in fact, a terribly bloody fight that pitted brothers against brothers, formed unbreakable bonds between soldiers fighting together, and provided life experiences that would allow the war's veterans to forget the hatred for the opposition and come together on common ground, united by one country and one army. Regardless of the violent nature of Civil War, reunions commemorating the war and the soldiers who fought and those who died were typically hosted at encampments set up on what was once the battlefield. Grand Army of the Republic reunions, as they came to be called, brought soldiers of Union and Rebel forces together in a social setting to reconnect and remember the dramatic time that was. These reunions were truly significant because not only were they chances for former hated enemies to get together, but they got together in an amicable fashion.
It was relaxed. I think the encampments were very relaxed. If you look at some of the video footage from the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg, the men walk up to the stone wall where the Confederates had charged and shake hands, and some of the Confederates give the rebel yell, and there's definitely a sense of brotherhood even between the two sides.
Oftentimes, soldiers attending these reunions would collect relics and souvenirs to bring back home to their families. One such soldier was Joshua Van Camp. Born in Perry County, Pennsylvania in 1844, Joshua E. Van Camp was a 20-year-old schoolteacher when he was drafted and fought as a member in Company E, 208th Regiment, Pennsylvania Volunteers. Throughout his service in the Union Army, Van Camp kept a diary, including that of his time at the Siege of Petersburg, Virginia. He wrote,
"Brother, I am not very well, but hope to be soon. You have heard, I suppose, of the late battles and the fall of Petersburg and Richmond. Well, I have taken part in them. My regiment led the charge of Petersburg. We advanced at a double quick amid a storm of iron and leaden hail. You need not be uneasy about me, for I shall take good care of myself, and hope to get home again."
After the war, Van Camp traveled to Fort Redmond, Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon, Chancellorsburg and Fredericksburg, Virginia, and as far south as Petersburg, Virginia. Along his travels, Van Camp collected souvenirs that would serve as reminders of his time in the 208th Pennsylvania Regiment.
When Van Camp traveled around with his family in the 1880s to visit the various Civil War battlefields, it's important to note that he would pick up rocks, in particular one from Fredericksburg, where he had jumped over the stone wall to escape the Confederates by a little house and then later got a drink. So I think it was important to him to retell some of these small stories that may not have been big in the big picture, but they were important to him.
These personal stories can better be told because of the relics collected. The stories provide us insight into a personal dimension of the Civil War and help us appreciate the momentous time in our country's history.